Ladies and gentlemen, and now for the height of hypocrisy and duplicity. I mean, when Democrats say, oh my God, Russian interference, they're the ones who purchased the Steele dossier compiled with Russian sources. And one active intelligence official within Putin's government, allegedly. But they had to investigate President Trump. They found nothing. While they used a dossier that they purchased with help from an intelligence official linked to the Kremlin, paid, working for the Kremlin, a Kremlin intelligence official in the Steele dossier, or who helped compile, one of the sources who helped compile the Steele dossier. And they're the ones who claimed Russian interference. When they're the ones who utilized the dossier, paid for it, and the compilation of gossip and hearsay and nonsense and the definition of what Democrats fear, which is misinformation from foreign adversaries, they're the ones who utilize that against President Trump. But see, again, they don't care about interference as long as they're doing the interfering. They're the ones who cheated Bernie Sanders. They're the ones who then blamed Russia and then utilized a dossier compiled with Russian sources, including one intelligence official working for the Kremlin. They're the ones who say, believe, except if it's Andrew Cuomo or except if it's Joe Biden, then don't believe. They're the ones who, it's really unbelievable. The duplicity, I support law enforcement and people of all backgrounds, people throughout the country support law enforcement. Of course, there are certain atrocities that take place, horrendous tragedies that need to be addressed through legislation. And I agree with that. You can support law enforcement and then say, okay, you need to address certain restraints or certain tactics. That's a rational viewpoint. But see, Democrats, I can go on forever. They're hypocrites, generally, a lot of the time. They're duplicitous, they're disingenuous, they create these myths in their mind, and in their minds, and through media, they create these narratives and myths and fairy tales. But here, Oklahoma House comes to halt as group fills gallery, protests bill moving through Capitol, Oklahoma City. The Oklahoma House of Representatives came to a halt while protesters in the state capitol chanted and interrupted the lawmakers' session Wednesday. Oh my God. This is by Dylan Richards, ABC affiliate in Oklahoma. Oh my God, our pristine democracy. Are these the Trumpers? Oh no. It's not. Nobody was compelled or incited to do anything by Democrats. These were left-leaning activists, but basically Democrats. They're going to vote Democrat. The Democratic Party hides behind its political party while activists then voice their concerns in some ways through the same means that are condemned by media, but are never condemned when it's left-leaning activists committing these, acting in this way. So you had $1 to $2 billion in property damage for 5 months prior to November. Last November, you had 19 lives lost, according to Wikipedia. Well, you can't blame Democrats. You can't blame any left-leaning activists. It just happened to coincide. But, oh my God, Trump incited, and he compelled, and he told people basically through his words to do, and he never did. He used the word peaceful, and then you have LeBron James with a tweet, "You're next," and then you have Congresswoman Maxine Waters saying, get more confrontational. Do you think maybe left-leaning activists took their words to heart and halted a session in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, in the state capitol? What happened to democracy? What happened to the outrage and the uproar and the fabric of our nation, the rule of law? the rule of law that Biden and Democrats and media and good people uphold. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Well, when Democrats do it, it's fine. Just like you need to believe everything against Trump, but don't believe anything against Biden, because in the Clintonian calculus, well, there's 23 or 26 against Trump and only 13 against Biden. So therefore, you should believe everything against all the accusations against Trump, but don't believe against Biden, because obviously the number is a lesser number. So there you go. This is their mentality. They just wield emotions like swords. And the problem is that you have 74 million Americans who didn't buy the nonsense and voted for President Trump. And the reason they did is because anybody who understands that media is simply there to prop up the Democratic Party, well, I can go on forever, but here, a group of about 24 people was at the Capitol protesting various bills that have moved through the House and Senate this session. Some of the bills that were that they were protesting include one they see as anti-protest bills, and others. So there's legislation that they don't agree with. Did they take the legal? Did they protest through legal means? Now, there's this notion that simply saying Trump tried to overturn the election means that he tried to stage this revolt. He had nothing to do with January 6th. The Attorney General of D.C. and the Mayor of D.C. never leveled charges at him. Nobody has ever leveled charges at Trump. Should there have been protests that day? I don't think so. That there should have been a national discourse, dialogue, debate fostered by President Trump. That's one of the pitfalls of social media, Twitter. Before protest, there was no good that could have come out of that protest. The arguments, what he was trying to communicate, he should have communicated through various means. I stated President Trump tomorrow should go on Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Brandon Tatum, Daily Wire. He should have done that after November if he wanted to convey his viewpoint, because you would have had a better forum than Mayor Giuliani with the Just for Men or whatever. You would have had, if you agree with Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Trump, or you disagree, that's not the issue. The issue is you have to communicate. Anyway, he tried to overturn the election by going to the Supreme Court, by going to state courts. Democrats were jumping up and down in jubilation. He was 0-50. They actually had a pretty good Supreme Court ruling in their favor. There's a couple rulings here and there in the favor of President Trump. But again, Democrats said, oh, you're 0-50, 0-52. He wasn't. He won some major, it doesn't matter. The point is, he went through the legal system. He didn't try to create this, it wasn't an armed rebellion, which is what Democrats tried to paint what took place. He was 0-50, and 0-52, which is what Democrats say, and that's legal. Okay? Legal. You have the Alito ruling is what I was referring to in Pennsylvania. But anyway, you have Democrats who are not doing anything legal now. January 6th comes to mind. The media and the Democratic Party are hypocrites. And now we found out, and God bless the officer. I would say that the events of January 6th did lead to that officer's losing his life. But a stroke is different from a fire extinguisher, which never happened. Yet another thing that never happened that they tried to create. So the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post have consistently within the past year, 2 years, 3 years broke stories that didn't happen, only to retract them. But before they retract them, they generated enough paranoia and hysteria and enough of a zeitgeist, enough of this ominous feeling about Trump, even though what they were reporting wasn't true. He if you look at the C-SPAN quote, he condemned the 1930s and 1940s Germans on that fateful day in 2017. So, that tragic day. So he condemned them numerous times to say it wasn't enough. It's never enough for Democrats. But see, Democrats, oftentimes in media, the biggest hypocrites on the planet. Then, this is interesting. The protest got intense for a few moments after the group slowly filed into the House gallery on the 5th floor. The peaceful protest got intense. Again, you're breaking the law. You can't do that. You can't interrupt. So, it's interesting how, like, they put a stop to granted, it's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same as January 6th. I'm not saying it's the same. But see, Democrats didn't write a rule book as to when you can get outraged and when you can't. They interrupted a session. That is supposed to be now interrupting a Congress or a state house is supposed to be an affront and, tarnishing democracy. Apparently nobody cares now. If it's Democrats or left-leaning activists doing this, there's no outrage. They don't care because they're the ones doing it. Again, definitely, H.A. Goodman is definitely not making a direct correlation between January 6th and Oklahoma. What I am saying is that there are similarities and no outrage, therefore hypocrisy. The peaceful protest got intense for a few moments after the group slowly filed into the House gallery on the 5th floor of the Capitol. That put the brakes on lawmaking for a couple of minutes. And a couple of protesters said they were asked to leave the building after what looked like a shouting match in the gallery. So they chanted, "No justice, no peace." Okay, so, what is that supposed to be? So now every semantics, and there's like a philosophy of language course with everything Trump says, but what does that mean? Is that justifying $1 to $2 billion in property damage? Because that doesn't help anybody. Granted, police brutality has to be addressed. A lot of other issues, medical malpractice. I'm not trivializing issues like brutality. That needs to be addressed on a federal level. You can still support law enforcement. But Democrats don't want to address it on a federal level. Blame the Democratic Party. But you don't vilify and demonize all law enforcement, just like you wouldn't vilify and demonize all doctors for medical malpractice or for horrendous things that trainers have done in universities across the country to female athletes. You don't say, well, I'm never going to go to a trainer again if I'm an athlete. So, anyway, I will link the article below. I'm following YouTube guidelines. Giving you the story. It's okay, I guess, to put an end or halt or impede the proceedings of a state legislature, but not Congress. Is that how it works? So is that how it works, Democrats? Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. I'll be back in an hour or so, an hour and a half.